Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, and we've got something kind of cool today. Another Hololive deck, but this time it's Hololive English. I had two objectives on building this deck. One was to use only Hololive English characters, and two, to use every Hololive English character in Weiss Schwarz. All 11 Myth, Council, and Project Hope. Obviously, Advent doesn't have any cards yet. I'm sure that will happen in Hololive 3, but for now, all 11 members represented in Weiss Schwarz are in this deck, and here is the list. Of course, you had to know we were going to go with the Gura Soul package, so lots of Soul triggers in this list, lots of Soul trigger synergy. Let's get right into it, starting with the level 0 Ina. This card is insane. We've talked about it before on the channel. It's a level 0 CX swap that also top checks 2 and rearranges, and it has a Soul trigger. We can get away with running 4 of this, one because it's a climax swap and a top check, which are both just independently excellent profiles to have. But the Soul trigger also gives it tons of synergy with the rest of our Soul trigger stuff, and it also bumps our 0 count without punishing us for not running more Soul triggers. Next, the 2/5 level 0 Amelia Watson. When this card dies, you can reveal up to 3 cards from the top of the deck. If you do, choose a card with a Soul trigger, add it to hand, put the rest in waiting room and ditch a card. This can whiff. It's essentially a Rize for Soul triggers, but we run so many Soul triggers, and so many of the cards we want to have in our hand have Soul triggers on them. This is fantastic mill. It's pretty decent selection on a relatively big level 0 body. Just, again, another thing that works great with the rest of the list. The Iris Brainstorm. When you reveal a Soul trigger in your trigger check, you can choose a character and give it 1,000 power. Again, we're running 30 Soul triggers. This card doesn't see a ton of play in the regular deck just because it doesn't have a Soul trigger and there's a level 1 Brainstormer that does. This is a deck where this card can really shine. Even more Soul trigger synergy, and it's a salvage Brainstorm, so you have the mill from the Brainstorm, you have the plussing and the fixing from the Brainstorm, and you can basically give at least 1, if not 2, sometimes 3k power to your things on the board over the course of your turn. When you swing with something, the trigger happens before the damage step as well. So if you swing in and you're 500 under or you're power tied and you reveal a Soul trigger, suddenly that lane can be buffed 1,000 power and you can win that lane. So Iris immediately solves a lot of our power problems just by basically granting a free 2k almost every turn. So those are more of our tech and mill zeros. These are our plussing zeros. There are a couple that are pretty good. One is this Kiara. If there's a marker underneath this, it gets 3,000 power, and on play, you can look at the top card of your deck. If it is a character or an event, you can put it face down underneath this as that marker. 80% chance to have a 4k beater on turn 1, pretty good. 4k is a good number to hit in the current metagame with a lot of good 3/5s running around and not a ton of 4k profiles. So in order to beat over this, your opponent has to usually commit something in terms of power pump, or they have to bomb it away, giving you an open lane. This card's pretty solid. The other plussing zero I really like is the 3k Ame coin flip. You can't play events or backups from your hand, but guess what? There are no events or backups for Hololive EN, so that text basically doesn't exist. It's just a 3k coin flip. At the beginning of your opponent's draw phase, reveal the top card. If it's level 1 or higher, bounce this into your hand. We run an okay number of cards that work with this. It's an almost 50-50 chance of getting the plus back. So whatever is better for your meta. I don't know if this is a deck that you're going to take to like a regional level event, just because if you are, you're probably running Ozuki Gura or some other, more optimized package. That being said, if you take this somewhere, if you know your meta, you can decide if the power is more important with the Kiara or if the coin flip is more important with the Watson. Both of these are good profiles. I think you can run either of those in this slot. I have a 2-1 split here, but I'm going to go back and forth, I'm sure, as the meta progresses. Next, a whole bunch of 1-ofs. We've got the Bay. Most of us know this card already. On play, pay 1, pitch 1, look it up to 3, add anything. On death, pay 1, pitch 1, look it up to 3, add anything. You can only ditch characters, so it's not a CX out, but it is a CX plus, potentially. You can dig for the choice, and you can dig for the choice again. So if you don't have it going into your combo turn, you can play this down. If you don't get it, play over it with the Kali and try again. See if you can't find your choice in the top 6 cards. It's an emergency out to finding CXs. It's also just a fix if you have, a bunch of Soul triggers in your hand and you need a playable, that kind of thing. It's a problem solver. It's perfect as a 1-of. So one of my stated goals with this deck was to play every Hololive member in English. A couple of them just don't have cards that work well with this deck. One of them is Fauna. Green's a hard color for this deck. We do run some green because we have a level 3 Iris we're going to talk about, but green is not a color we want to try to fix for at level 1. Fauna does have a good level 1 green card that on play you can ditch and summon a 0 from Waiting Room, so it's a good way to get your Brainstormer back. I don't want to try to play into green as well as yellow and also some blue at level 1, but that's definitely a card that you can make work in this. It's a good card, but I just don't think it works as well as playing more into the blue for level 1. In order to compensate for that, every member of Hololive EN has a Drop Searcher, so this is where we're going to have Fauna, a Drop Searcher. The PR, on play, pay 1, pitch 1, search your deck, and if it's in the middle position of center stage, it gets 2k. So it sits at 3/5. It's a good profile. Like, this is objectively a good drop search profile. The next card is the same way. Mume has a couple of cards as well, has a Memory Hater that's pretty good, and a level 1 combo that's playable, but again, neither of those have soul triggers, much like the level 1 Fauna, and it just isn't as good as other options. Memory Hate isn't super useful in this meta right now, except in a couple of niche matchups, and I think I would rather run the level 1 combo that mills me more. Mume's kind of on the outside looking in with a lot of her playable cards that don't work as well with this deck, so we have her Drop Searcher in here as well. Crony's representation is the CX Ditch Salvage that also has Shift at the beginning of main phase. You can switch a blue card in hand and this card in your clock. This is an excellent one-of to have, especially in a pants list, because if you trigger pants, you have the extra pants in hand. You can, your next turn, play this, ditch that pants out, and fix for something else you'd rather have. You can also get away with playing this profile as a one-of, because if it's in your clock, it's basically in your hand, as long as you have another blue card, which you probably will. This is a neat profile. Giving it Shift just makes it that much better. It also fits nicely with her whole clock time theme. She does have another good card. It's a level 0 that also has Shift, that is a pay 1, pitch 1 refresh on play. I don't think that that is as necessary, but you definitely can play it if you want to play that as a one-of tech. That's definitely an option if that's how you want to get Crony into the list. I think this fits a little bit better because it's more about establishing consistency rather than bailing us out of trouble. But if we desperately need a free refresh, we have that option in this set as well. Level 1 combo, Calliope Mori. If you have 2 or more other characters, it gains 3k, goes up to 5/5. On attack, mill up to 4 with the CX in play, the choice CX. Mill up to 4 cards. If you do, and that includes 0, you can choose up to 1 level X or lower Hololive character in Waiting Room, add it to your hand, this card gets another 500 power. X is equal to the number of cards with a soul trigger. So off of this, you have selective mill, because you can mill up to 4, including 0, but you always get a chance to salvage. If you choose to mill 0, you milled 0 cards with soul triggers, therefore X is equal to 0, you can go get a 0. You basically can't whiff this combo unless you mill 4 CXs into an empty Waiting Room, so basically perfect deck speed, up to 15 cards with triggers, which is really nice when you have the whole thing. Power is just fine. It's 7 when you combo, 5/5 when you don't, and that doesn't include the Iris in the back row. It also has a soul trigger. That's just a theme. We want to have as many soul triggers as we can. This is a really good card. It hits good numbers, and it doesn't plus more than 1, but it pluses perfectly pretty much every time because 60% of our deck is soul triggers. Next, the Kiara back row 1/1. It is a 500 level X. At the beginning of your climax phase, you can look at the top card of your deck. You can also rest this when you use Accelerate to choose a character in your Waiting Room and put it into stock. So, pays for itself whenever you use Accelerate, so it will pay for itself over the course of the game multiple times. You also get a free top check at the beginning of your climax phase, so that you can check to make sure your Gura is going to go off, or you can choose your attack order. If, say, you have 2 Callies and something that isn't Callie down, you can see if that top card is a soul trigger, so you know if you want to trigger that card, or if you want to mill that card off of your Callie combo. Knowing the top card of your deck is just a useful ability basically all the time, and as soon as you hit level 1 and drop this, you get to know the top card of your deck going into every attack phase. Really strong profile. It's not going to see a lot of play in the main deck, but man, in this deck, this feels really nice to just set and forget in your back row alongside that Iris. You don't have to move either of them from the back row the whole game if you don't want to. Our last level 1, it's Ina during your turn. If all your characters are Hololive, this gains 2k, so it's always going to be 6/5 on your turn. It has Accelerate, which means it can proc Kiara's free stock ability. at the beginning of your climax phase. You can put a Hololive character from waiting room to the bottom of clock, look at the top card of your deck, put it on the top or the bottom, and then this gets on reverse salvage. So another thing that top checks, right? So you can top check twice looking for a soul trigger if you are playing this card and you have the Kiara down in the back row. It also pluses perfectly to your hand for the price of a single clock, which is extremely good rate. And it's a beater at 6/5 that can get more power with the Iris. The only thing it doesn't have is a soul trigger. Still really good though. I think that you can get away with not having a soul trigger on this card because of how powerful its fixing ability is. And because Callie is going to mill us basically perfectly, if we have this down in, say, the off lane next to the Callies, we can mill all the way through our deck, no problem. We're not worried about having the extra card in our clock because we can hit our refresh point consistently with the other mill pieces we have in our deck. Moving on to level 2, we run 4 copies of the Ame 2/1. When this card attacks, it gains plus X, X equal to the number of other Hololive characters you have times 1,000. So if you have a full board, this swings at 11. At the beginning of climax phase, you can accelerate, so this also procs Kiara's ability. When you do, it gains 1,000 power and on reverse blind stock 2. So it pays for itself and gets an extra stock. If you triple this and pay 3 stock, it's fine. You're going up 3 stock, not including your actual triggers. So you can go from having 3 stock to 9 stock, 10 if you have a Kiara in the back row, because again, it triggers the accelerate ability. So this is what builds us all that stock to make the Guras pop off. It also gets power off of the Iris triggers, so you're going to be able to see this at 13, 14, 15. If you have the Kiara behind it, you can get it up to 16. This gets a ton of power, super easy to get. Its reverses at 2. It can also clear pretty much any big thing off the board. So if your opponent has a standby target out or an early play, this can just deal with that, no problem. And it pluses stock right back to you. You gotta be mindful of your clock. You don't want to be, shoving yourself into 3 and then blind stocking a bunch of times. But early at 2, doubling or tripling this even, just to get a mountain of stock to know that you have Gura. And it's also kind of stock swap proof because it's blind. So you're not, setting yourself up to just get ripped to shreds off a stock swap because no one knows what's in your stock. It might not be worth it for them to stock swap you. They don't know. So they'll either hold it off, or if they do it, they use the resources to maybe get you and maybe put you in a bad deck state. There's no way to know. I like this card a ton. With the Gura, it's getting played in the main list. It's getting played here. Next, the Gura back row 2/1, 4,000 power. All of your level 3 characters in front of this get 2,000 power. You can also rest this to draw Ditch. This card's probably the most underwhelming in the list. It probably doesn't even need to be here. It's just nice to have more soul triggers, and it's playable at level 2, whereas if we stuff even more level 3s into the deck, we can maybe flood our hand with cards we can't use. It also does have the draw Ditch, which helps us potentially dig into CXs. It's an okay card. I don't expect it to come down on the board a lot, but if it does, it makes our Guras even bigger. So if we have a threat that we're dealing with on the board that we need to get rid of, we can make our Guras very big. It does not pump the Ames, so it does not help us get our Accelerate reverses. If it did, that would make this card much more useful, but as it stands, still useful at level 3 if we're in a situation where we really want to get a reverse, or maybe our opponent is holding up a memory kick and we want to make sure that we dodge that. And then finally, the Shark herself. If all your characters are Hololive, this sits at 11, so it's 11 all the time. On play, heal 1. Combos with the Pants. Pay 2, pitch 1. If your hand has 6 or fewer cards, you can deal 2 to your opponent, mill a card, and if a card that you mill has a soul trigger, deal 1 damage. You are guaranteed pretty much to go 2-1, probably 4. You are likely to go 2-1-1-4 or 2-1-1-3 in a single lane with this card. Just insane. This card can kill you from 3-0 by itself in 1 lane, not even counting any of your other swings. Insane power, insane push. It's got all this other power stuff too, so like with the CX down and the Iris, you're easily getting this with the Kiara even into the 13s, 14s, 16s maybe if you have the Gura 2/1 down. This card is insane. This card, there's no other way to put it. This is probably, to my mind, the best card ever printed in English, easily the best finisher ever printed in English, and it's going to be the meta-defining card in this fall meta. I am very confident in that. That being said, let's say for some reason you don't have the stock. Maybe you only popped off a single Ame, or maybe you got rushed a little bit, and you only have the stock for 1 or 2 Guras. Here you go. You're playing this Kali in the off lane. When it attacks, give something 2k, help you get a reverse. Also, it's a Musashi. Free, cancel burn X. X equal to the top card of your deck milled. It's level +1. So if the damage from this cancels, mill a card, burn equal to that card's level +1. It's just an extra burn. You basically have an extra shot at doing some damage if the damage cancels. You've got a bunch of stuff in here that's not 0. You have about a 50% chance of hitting a 0 in a, assuming all things equal. But you also have plenty of chances to hit a 1, 2, or a 3, so the burn can be significant. This is just a really good offlane. In a perfect world, it never sees the board because you triple Gura, but that's not always going to happen. This is a way to push more damage, keep a consistent finish your turn up if you maybe can't get more than 1 Gura down. Next, level 3 Iris PR. If your opponent has a level 3 or higher character, this card becomes an early play, so you can respond to a standby board or an early play by slamming this. This card has a unique ability, and there aren't a lot of level 3s in Hololive English. In fact, the 4 that you see here are the only 4 options we have for level 3s, and we wanted to have as many soul triggers as possible, but this card's ability makes it, I think, just a little bit more interesting. On the turn this card is played, when it attacks, everybody gets 2,500 power, which is by itself ridiculous. Like, just on attack, give your board 2,500 power is insane. This can pump your Ames. If you're looking at a massive board that you need to get reverses on, maybe you're playing into something that just has a massive board and they have a level 3 down somewhere, maybe even in the back row as a standby target, and you just go, this is down here now. On attack, I'm gonna pump my Ames even more. So now they're swinging in at, 14-5, 15-5, plus whatever triggers you get off the back row, Iris Brainstorm. The power alone on this is really impressive, but this card's other ability is also really interesting. It gives all of your characters the power, and on reverse, put the top card of your opponent's clock into waiting room and clock kick the character you got the reverse on. This can help blow up boards that have staying power because of encore effects, or keep your opponent from paying 3 to encore things. You can just effectively remove their board and deny any encore. There are some matchups where this is relevant, especially things that, run standby. Most of them have some kind of encore effect. You can just get rid of it with this Iris. Green's not a great color in Hololive English, that's why it's the least representative of the 3 colors that English has access to. There's enough green that you can tech in to get there with this and to give you an opportunity to play this. Shoving, a Fauna Drop Searcher into level when you have blue and yellow in your clock, those kinds of things. Those kinds of plays are available. You could also play 4 of the Iris Brainstormer if you really wanted to get more green. You could also not play this at all and not worry about playing into the green. Definitely options, but I like this card. It's a 2 because 1, soul triggers, and 2, I want to have just enough green so that I have access to this in the matchups where I want it. Maybe not a game-breaking card, but there are a couple of matchups out there, a couple of games out there, where dropping this Iris on the board can actually really turn the tide. And then finally, we do have Sana. Despite graduation, Sana is represented in both Weiss and this deck. On play, heal, and it gets 500 for each of your other Hololive characters. This is just a healer. It doesn't really do anything else. It gives us a Sana in the deck. It gives us a Soul Trigger in the deck. And the art is good. What are you going to do? This card is not exactly going to help you win a lot of games unless it is one of those triggers you mill off the Gura. But if that is its value, that is its value. It gets us to 30 Soul Triggers, and it also can heal us in an emergency situation, because other than Gura, we don't have any other healers. So you could run this as a 2 of if you really wanted to heal down to 3-0. If this were an early play healer, I would be running this at like a 3 of probably. But unfortunately, it can only heal you when you're at 3, so its use is limited, but it is fine to have as a 1 of, and it gets Sana into the deck. So in terms of cost, this deck currently running about 125 bucks for everything. The Guras and the Kalis have been going up in price recently, so if you want to get a hold of those, you should probably do it relatively quickly. Those are going up, and I don't know if they're going to start coming down. A lot of Hololive stuff got opened right away. Prices obviously fluctuate a lot in the early weeks, but it seems like those prices may be settling a little higher than they were. so you may want to get those more expensive cards now if you haven't gotten them yet. Competitively speaking, if you're taking a Hololive deck to regionals and you're playing the Gura top end, you're probably playing Ozki, the level 0 standby that Brandon talked about last time, or maybe you're running something else. Maybe you're running the Kanata, right? Like, you have options with this. This deck runs really smoothly. This deck runs really, really well. It's an easy deck to play. All of your stuff just goes off over and over and over again, trigger on trigger on trigger, that just keeps buffing your entire board. You get multiple accelerate triggers, you're getting cards into hand, you're getting cards into stock. Super, super resource efficient. It's an easy deck to pilot. The Kali combo is really easy. Like, once you get that level 1 combo on the board, the rest of the game is just like slam Ame, get stock, slam Gura, win the game. It's less optimized than that good Ozki Hololive list, but it's still really good. It runs the best cards from the Ozki list, and it runs a very capable level 1 combo. Super consistent. It will, if you took this to a regional event, you would have a real chance to top. Like, it definitely could go top 8 at a regional event. This exact list, or just a Hololive English list in general, can absolutely go top 8 at a regional event. It's consistent enough, it's powerful enough. Not having the standby trigger makes it a little more expensive to get the Ames down, and also the Guras as well. So, like, that's really why the standby build is probably the best way to build the Gura top end specifically. But this deck on its own, if you want to play Hololive English on its own, just because, you can take it into any room and you can give any deck a run for its money. If you're playing this, it's because you like Hololive English. I think there's a lot to like about this deck, both in terms of its gameplay and its characters and all that. So I wanted to play this list specifically, and it's fun to push damage sometimes. Sometimes you just want to throw a combo at the board and turn them sideways and go take 14 to the face. And that is what Gura does. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this one. We'll have gameplay for this on Thursday. Next week, another Clock Talk. 5 cards, 5 minutes. The following Thursday, and in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another video. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.